So, today we're going to break down the 12 stages of burnout. It's a journey so many of us are on without even realizing it. And understanding the map, well, that's the very first step to finding your way out.
Have you ever had one of those days? You sit down to work, you stare at that blank screen for what feels like an eternity, and just nothing. And what's the first thing you do? You blame yourself. You call yourself lazy. But what if it's not a character flaw at all? What if that feeling is actually your brain, your whole nervous system, throwing up a giant stop sign trying to protect you from pushing way, way past your limits? You see, that feeling of complete and utter exhaustion isn't just stress. It's something much more specific, a progressive phenomenon that psychologists have been studying and mapping out for decades. This idea was first really defined by a German-born American psychoanalyst named Herbert Freudenberger. Back in 1974, he was observing these incredibly passionate volunteers at a free clinic in New York, and he saw them just become completely depleted. He's the one who gave it a clinical name, burnout. So how does it actually happen? Well, Freudenberger and his colleague Gail North came up with a 12-stage model. And what's so important to get here is that burnout isn't like an on-off switch. It's a slow fade. And while these stages might not happen in this exact order for everyone, they give us a really powerful map of the path. Okay, so let's dive into those first few stages. And here's the thing that's so wild. Burnout doesn't usually start with exhaustion. It starts with passion, with excessive passion and overcommitment. It all begins with this overwhelming ambition, right? A deep need to prove your worth, especially if you're in a new job or a new role. You set these impossibly high expectations for yourself, and you just take on a mountain of work to prove you can handle it. It feels like ambition, but it's ambition with a really obsessive edge. And from there, that compulsion just snowballs into working harder and harder. You feel this intense pressure to do everything yourself, like right now. Delegating feels like a weakness, so your workday gets longer, you start skipping breaks, you basically become a work addict, just chasing those goals you set for yourself. And as work starts to swallow everything, your own needs get shoved to the side. Things like sleep, healthy food, seeing your friends, getting some exercise, they all start to feel like luxuries you just can't afford. Your life gets completely out of balance, and work becomes the only thing that matters.
Okay, this next stage is a huge turning point. Deep down, a part of you knows something is wrong. You might feel jittery, maybe even panicky. But instead of seeing the workload as the problem, you blame your boss or your coworkers. You displace the conflict. You're avoiding the real source of your stress.
Now, as we enter the middle stages, the changes start to become less about your work habits and way more about who you are as a person. This is where that internal shift really kicks in. Your entire value system starts to get warped. Hobbies, friends, family, all the things that used to make you you, they start to seem irrelevant. Work becomes your entire identity. And this often leads to what's called emotional blunting, where you just feel less and care less about everything outside of your job. At this point, the denial gets even stronger. You might become cynical, really intolerant. You start seeing your coworkers as lazy or undisciplined or too demanding. Any problem is somebody else's fault, never your own unsustainable pace. And all that frustration and aggression just keeps building up. Your social life starts to feel, well, like another chore. So you withdraw, you start avoiding friends, you avoid family. You're so emotionally drained and overwhelmed that just being alone feels safer. Sometimes this isolation gets masked by other things as you look for some kind of relief from that constant pressure.
By now, the changes are pretty undeniable to everyone around you. People notice. You're more impatient, maybe more aggressive. You snap at people you love. Your friends and family are worried, but you'll probably just insist that you're fine. You're just stressed. And this brings us to the work of a real pioneer in this field, UC Berkeley professor Christina Maslach. She defined the core experience of burnout with 3 key dimensions. First, that feeling of deep emotional exhaustion. Second, a cynical detachment from your job, which is called depersonalization. And third, a feeling that you're just not effective anymore. This is the trifecta that defines the crisis point.
So now we enter the final and most critical stages. And this is where burnout becomes a really serious threat to your health and your well-being. You start to feel disconnected from your own life, almost like you're watching it from a distance. You see yourself and other people almost like objects, not real people. This is more than just cynicism. It's a profound detachment. It's really a coping mechanism for stress that has become completely overwhelming. A deep, hollowing inner emptiness starts to take over. And to fight this void, you might desperately look for activities just to feel something, anything. Overeating, sex, alcohol, drugs. You're just trying to fill a hole that work has carved out inside of you. And that hopelessness and exhaustion can evolve into full-blown depression. The future just feels bleak and dark. You feel lost, unsure, and completely dreamed. For some people, this stage can even bring thoughts of suicide. And then, finally, we reach the last stage, burnout syndrome. This is a total collapse. Your physical, your emotional, and your mental resources are just completely gone. You can't function anymore. Just think about that for a second. That incredible, destructive journey. You start out with this compulsive need to prove yourself, full of ambition, and you end in a state of total collapse. It's a really stark reminder of how high achievement, when it's unchecked, can lead to complete devastation. Let that sink in for a moment. The final stage isn't about just needing a vacation. It is often a medical emergency. The sources are crystal clear. This can be a life-threatening state, and it requires immediate professional help. So why did we just walk through all these dark stages? Because understanding this path is your most powerful tool. Recognizing where you are on this map is the first and absolutely most important step toward changing your direction. And hey, if you're finding this helpful, subscribe to the Psych Files. We put out weekly psychology insights that actually matter, breaking down complex topics like this to help you better understand yourself and the world. So, I'll leave you with this question. Which of these stages do you recognize in yourself? Or maybe in someone you care about? This isn't about judgment. It's all about awareness. If you feel comfortable sharing, tell us your story. You are definitely not alone in this.